This is episode 351. We're doing our week 14 NFL picks against the spread for the 2021 season. Joined once again by Jacob Camenker from the Sporting News. Jacob, how are you and how's your week 13?
I'm doing great. My week 13 was good. I went 7-7 last week, so on the surface not great, but I didn't feel like anything I got wrong was egregiously wrong. I feel like everything that I ended up on the wrong side of was explainable, or the games were close, or we had the right side. They just couldn't make that one play needed to get the cover. And we both went 4-0 on the Sunday afternoon slate, so I feel like we're getting a beat on things now a little bit. We'll need a couple more lucky breaks to have a consistent winning week, but I think I ended up profiting because I think my unit count was higher on the games that I bet that I won, so that's always a good thing too. So I have nothing to complain about. How was your week?
Pretty good. Sunday was great. It was 7-5, but I hit most of my top plays, which is nice. The Chargers being the best one. Like you said, 4-0 in the late afternoon slate. The Dolphins Giants game was the only frustrating one for me. I had the Giants. We both did. And it was like 6 drops. Kenny Galladay got hurt. It was just unfortunate. It felt like they could have been closer. But then Monday night happened, and what could have been an amazing week turned into just like a decent week. Just based on how many mistakes the Bills made, the 2 drops by Dawson Knox, the drop by Stephon Diggs in the end zone. And I don't understand why the Bills didn't throw more. It seemed like they were not confident in Josh Allen beating the win. And it feels like with Allen's arm strength, that was the that was the advantage they had in this game. Like Mac Jones doesn't have a strong arm, and that's why the Patriots threw just 3 times. But Josh Allen showed late in the game, throwing into the win, he did just fine. So it's why didn't the Bills throw more? And they just wasted so many downs running the ball, especially in the red zone where they had the 2 possessions in the fourth quarter. They ran twice in the red zone. They got no yards either time. It just felt like they wasted downs and they just threw the game away.
Yeah, and I agree with you. Parrot in the chat saying I'm very happy that the Patriots won. Very true. I'm happy they won. But I was honestly livid at points watching that game because my boss is a Bills fan. So I talk to a lot of Bills fans, naturally. And the Bills were just horrible. Sean McDermott coached a terrible game. His team was not prepared. Like you said, they stuck with the run too often. And I thought it would have been fine if they ran maybe a little bit less, but they weren't running Zach Moss enough. I thought he was the powerful runner in that game that would have actually, ground out some yards. They didn't give him enough carries. And I never say that. I don't like Zach Moss usually, but against the Patriots, he's good. And the other thing that bugged me was they didn't use Josh Allen's legs. He was the most effective runner they had. So if you're committed to, we don't want to throw too much, or, we want to see if we can grind out some yards, you have to have some designed quarterback runs. And I'm pretty sure they didn't have any, or if they did, they had maybe 1. He had 6 rushing attempts. 2 of his longest came on scrambles after, passes that no one was open and no one chased him down until he had gotten the first down. But yeah, I thought it was a terrible plan. Sean McDermott really cost the team with burning timeouts at inopportune times. It seemed like Bill Belichick was in his head. Just nothing about that game plan made sense. And the thing that killed me too is they could throw the ball, but they didn't even try to work the short passing game when the running game wasn't working. It went from, okay, the running game's not working, and now we're running out of time, to, all right, we got to just start launching stuff downfield, which Allen could do, but it was harder for the receivers to track. So that was a mess.
Yeah, challenging that sneak by Mac Jones was terrible too. It's just a waste of that timeout. They really could have used it at the end. I don't know what happened at the end too. They had that injury and 40 seconds took off the clock. Felt like they shouldn't have they waited until 9 seconds to announce that penalty. Felt like it should have been a 10-second runoff, but I don't get why so much time ran off the clock too. That was weird. So they should have had an extra timeout to stop the clock and give themselves another chance. You make a good point about Josh Allen not scrambling. He scrambled so much the week before against the Saints, and I thought that might be a harbinger of things to come in this game, especially in the windy conditions. And yeah, he didn't run nearly as much as he should have. Just a frustrating game all around. It was just so awful. We had a question here before we begin. Why did you switch to the Rams minus 12.5? Was because of my comment on the channel. I just thought that the Jaguars, without their top 2 cornerbacks, Shaq Griffin especially being out, I thought that was a big advantage, and like the Rams it was like a get right game for them. I know you switched. You switched the Rams too, or I don't know if you switched, but I knew you had the Rams also.
Yeah, I switched to the Rams as well. Once Shaq Griffin was out, that was kind of like, all right, the Jaguars aren't going to be able to stop this team. Like, this is not a good situation. The Rams are desperate for a win. So, I thought maybe they wouldn't show up, but then after looking at it, I was like, no, they're going to show up. They're going to be okay here.
Yeah, it was the easiest of the games. So yeah, before we begin, please hit like, subscribe, comment below, share this video. Visit the link in the description for the merch store. I'm wearing a dark green Walter football shirt. If you're watching on YouTube, you can see that. So check all that out. That would help us out a lot. Let's get to the Thursday night game. My dad's going to hate this one because he hates both of these teams. The Steelers at the Vikings. Thought I should share that. This line opened up Vikings -3.5. It got bet down to -3. It's -3, -120 in most of the sports books. So you have to pay a little bit of a premium to bet the Vikings here. So who do you like in this game?
Yeah, I like the Steelers here. Obviously, they would have liked them more at 3.5, but those went away pretty quickly. It's kind of a tough game to figure out because, motivation would favor the Vikings, you would think, because they're coming off a humiliating loss opposed to the Steelers, who just beat the Ravens, their arch rival, and could come out flat on a short week if they're like looking back and kind of celebrating that a little bit. But at the same time, the Steelers are in the thick of the wild card race and they know they need a win here. So maybe they don't care about that. And, while the Vikings should be motivated, maybe they would quit on Mike Zimmer. So there's a lot of dueling motivations in this game. And if you look at the Vikings offense, they're just so banged up. Adam Thielen's probably not going to play because of a high ankle sprain. We don't know if Christian Darrisaw is going to play. And without Darrisaw, the Lions pass rush looked incredible. It was the most bizarre thing. They were getting so much pressure on Kirk Cousins. And this was a team that could not could not get penetration and into the backfield. And they were just rattling Kirk Cousins like crazy. So I don't have a lot of faith in the Vikings O-line if he doesn't play. And then Dalvin Cook, he's limited in practice today. He might not play. That doesn't matter as much because Alexander Madison's fine. But, you'd still like to have two high-end backs if you could. There's just a lot of injury concerns, and Kirk Cousins has had his share of issues in prime time. So all of these things make me want to not be on the Vikings, especially where they're favored. I know we're getting a little bit of line value on them at -3 because we got to a key number. And the Steelers could look ahead because they have a battle with the Titans looming, which doesn't seem like a big deal, but the Titans might end up in the wild card race with the Steelers in the AFC. So that's someone they're directly competing with, whereas the Vikings, they're in opposite conferences, so they wouldn't compete unless they got to the Super Bowl, which that's not happening. So, that it wouldn't even matter if that happened. So I'm going to stick with the Steelers at +3, though. I think this is a close game. I think all the issues on Minnesota make them an unappealing bet to me. But I don't think I'm going to bet the Steelers here. I'm just picking them for office pool purposes.
So another issue for Minnesota is Eric Kendricks. And I actually ended up betting on Detroit when Kendricks was announced out. Minnesota's defense with him and without him is just night and day. Minnesota is so good at defending in the middle of the field with him. But without him, you saw TJ Hawkinson go off, which was unusual to see. Given that George Kittle was limited to one catch the week before, just shows you how important Kendricks is to this defense. If Kendricks is out, I'm going to be on the Steelers with you because I don't see how the Vikings are going to stop, Freiermuth, Najee Harris. It seems like the Steelers are going to be able to attack the middle of the defense. But if Kendricks is back, we're also going to have Anthony Barr on the field. I'm going to be tempted to be on Minnesota just because Minnesota is going to be able to stop what the Steelers are going to do. Minnesota's pass rush is second in pressure rate, and the Steelers can't block at all. And I know Minnesota has issues blocking as well, but they should be able to run the ball in the Steelers. The Steelers can't stop the run. Devontae Freeman looked awesome last week. It's when's the last time we said that? It was 4 years ago or 5 years ago. He looked great. And so I think Madison could have a huge game. So I think this is kind of an even game if Kendricks is out. So I would lean toward the underdog. But if Kendricks is back, I think Minnesota is just the better team. I think the Steelers stink. The win over the Ravens, I feel like is kind of making them inflated. You mentioned the line value. The advanced spread was Minnesota -4, so we're getting even more line value than like most people would think. So yeah, that's going to be the big thing for me is Eric Kendricks' status.
Yeah, I think it'll be the same for me. If Eric Kendricks plays, I'll probably rethink things a bit because I agree with you. I don't think the Steelers are good. They just find ways to stay in games, and it's very frustrating to watch if you don't bet them at the right times because you're like, this team shouldn't be in this game. You're like, this offense is painful, and TJ Watt looks amazing, but, aside from him on defense, Cameron Haywood too, but, they have a bunch of problems in the back end, especially up the middle of the field. So yeah, I think if Eric Kendricks comes back, I'll probably switch sides, but I don't know if I'm betting this game either way. It just doesn't seem like one I want to bet because Minnesota seems primed to choke in these big moments, and Pittsburgh you just can't trust.
Yeah, that's true. Minnesota does seem to choke in moments like this. Although I'll say, like, the public is on the Steelers, so maybe it's kind of like a game where Minnesota is not expected to win, so they do well. It's kind of like that's how they operate. Is like when they're expected to win, they choke. When they're not expected to win, they come up big and maybe win. Like they won that playoff game against the Saints a couple years ago. So it's kind of how they operate, but. So I'm not big on this game either, but we'll see what happens to Kendricks. So moving on to Sunday, we have the Raiders at the Chiefs. Similar line to what we saw last week with Kansas City. Kansas City is -9.5 against the Raiders here at home. So who do you like in this game?
Yeah, I'm going to be on the Raiders. This is the second straight week I'm picking against Kansas City with a +9, +10 type number. Last week it did not pan out against the Broncos, but that game was a lot closer than the final score would indicate. The Broncos just did not play well on offense at all. Their defense very well. We'll talk more about that later, but this is just a terrible spot for the Chiefs. I can't see why they'd be super motivated for this one. They're coming off of a win against a division rival on national television. They're in good shape in the division race now. They're in control of their own destiny. They've already crushed the Raiders, and they have to play their toughest divisional rival, the Chargers, on Thursday night. I can't imagine them being overly concerned about the Raiders. I think they're going to be looking ahead a bit and preparing and saying, hey, like, we really need to beat the Chargers. We need to beat the Raiders too, but we can do that. We had an easy time doing that in Vegas. And the score of that game in Vegas was a blowout, but it was really closer than you would think because in the third quarter, I think it was still a one-possession game, and Deshaun Jackson fumbled, and that kind of was the not-so-slow death spiral of the Raiders in that game. They just kind of lost it from there. I think the Raiders are going to want a bit of revenge for that because they haven't been the same team since then. They looked like a potential wild card contender before that. And they've kind of fallen off. So I think they're going to treat this as an important game. I think they're going to keep it close. And, even if it's like a 16, 17-point game at the end, I think the Raiders will have a chance for a backdoor cover. In fact, Teddy Bridgewater had a chance for a backdoor cover late last week. And, he just couldn't deliver because he could not throw in the wind. But I think Derek Carr will have a better chance of doing that. So I'm going to be on the Raiders here for a couple of units, I think.
Yeah, me too. Obvious, letdown spot for the Chiefs. I think like you detailed it perfectly. They play the Chargers in 4 days. They're coming off a big win on national TV, and they beat the Raiders already. So it's not like where is the motivation? So I agree with that. You could also argue that this spread is too high, given that the Chiefs haven't done well offensively in recent weeks, except for the winner against the Raiders, which may sound weird because they're playing the Raiders again. But outside of that, their point totals have been 22, 19, 13, 20, and 10. Even if they're on the upper end of that spectrum at 22, all the Raiders need is 13 to cover the spread, which they should be able to get, right? So I think the Raiders are the right side here with the Chiefs not being fully focused. Just seems like I said, a letdown spot for them, and I think a good spot for the Raiders. I think that Josh Jacobs should be able to run on them. We'll see about Darren Waller coming back, but if he plays, that's a big advantage for them too. So I'm with you on the Raiders.
Yeah, I'm glad to hear that because last week we're opposite sides, and I got burned by the Broncos, and that That game, I felt like that was closer than it looked. If Vic Fangio cost the Broncos at least 4 points, I think, in that game. So, should have been a push, but I won't focus too much on that.
Well, the one thing I was worried about with the Broncos, I wasn't sure if Teddy Bridgewater was going to be 100% because
Right.
he was banged up the week before. I don't know if he was 100% either. Like it's hard to tell. Like I don't know if you have an opinion on that, but like you mentioned the wind, and that was definitely a factor. But I don't know if it was the wind or if it was like him being like sort of injured. I just don't know.
Yeah, I couldn't tell if he was injured, but I think without a doubt the wind was the bigger impact if he was injured. But he took some runs and he actually tried to make a tackle on the Daniel Sorensen pick, which he did
Mhm.
try to do against Philadelphia that one week. So I think that was a good sign that he might be okay. So I think he'll be in better shape this week. But yeah, that game was weird because I kept thinking, oh, the Broncos are letting the Chiefs pull away, but the Chiefs never pulled away. So I think their lacking offense makes this 9.5 point spread appealing.
Yeah, they're making mistakes again. Like there's four drops, one of which turned into an interception. It's just like I have a bet on the Chiefs to win the division, and I didn't feel great about it, even though they ended up winning. It's just like man, this team's just going to choke away another win. I feel like so. We'll see what happens. The next game is Saints at the Jets. This line opened up Saints -6. Some sharp action brought this down to 5.5, even 5 in some sports books. So who do you like in this game?
Yeah, I had the Saints written down here, but I think I'm actually going to pivot and go with the Sharps. The Jets, they moved the ball okay enough last week against the Eagles. They stalled out in the second half, but they scored touchdowns on their first 3 possessions. And I just don't see why the Saints should be like a 5-6 point road favorite against the Jets with their current quarterbacking situation because, the Saints have Taysom Hill, who I know he looked terrible on Thursday night last week because he threw 4 interceptions. The stat line looks bad. He played better than that, but the issue is his finger. He's dealing with mallet finger, and he might try to play through it. We saw what happened when Russell Wilson tried to play through the injury. And, part of me wants to say, like, oh, but Taysom Hill's going to run the ball a lot more. They're just going to go run dominant. The Jets don't have a great run defense. They struggle against running backs. Alvin Kamara will be back. Mark Ingram will be there. They'll have Taysom Hill. Maybe they do what the Patriots did to the Bills and just run it down their throat. But even if that happens, I think the Jets can, stop that to an extent. I feel like Taysom Hill's going to make some sort of mistake eventually if he's forced to throw. So I was very torn on this one. I wrote that I had to decide during the show, but I think I just think it's the Jets are the better side for this specific circumstance. If Taysom Hill was fully healthy, I think I would like this line in favor of the Saints a lot more. But at a 5 point road favorite with an injured quarterback, and if Taysom Hill can't play through that mallet finger, you're talking about either Trevor Siemian or Ian Book in his first career start being a road favorite. Like I like Ian Book as much as the next guy, but I don't want to bet on that happening. So I'm going to roll with the Jets here. I feel like they should have had a chance to cover last week against the Eagles. Their defense isn't good right now, but their offense is starting to do a little something.
Yeah, this is going to be an ugly week for the card. We're going to have some bad sides, and the Jets are one of them. I'm going to bet on the Jets. It's not appealing, but, the Saints should not be favored by 5.5 on the road, given their current status. Like, if Taysom Hill was 100% healthy, then, okay, I could see it. But he's not. Like he has the Ryan Mallett finger, as you were talking about. He's not healthy. He threw 4 interceptions in that game, which is frustrating because I ended up betting the Saints for 1 unit just because I thought at +7 there's good value last Thursday night, and he just didn't come through because of the four interceptions and the injured finger. And then you have Simeon, who should not be a 5.5 point favorite either. We saw Simeon lose to the Falcons outright at home as a 6 point favorite. So the Jets are definitely in play. And I think like the Saints really can't it sounds weird, but they don't really match up that well against the Jets because the Saints are really good at taking away the number 1 receiver. So Elijah Moore should be locked up, but Zach Wilson spreads the ball around. Like, I mean, when he's not throwing interceptions, that is like he is spreading the ball around. Like you should be able to throw to Crowder. I know Corey Davis is out, but these Braxton Berrios, Ryan Griffin, his running backs out of the backfield, like he should be able to move the ball a little bit. And the Jets, their run defense is like not that bad. They struggle against like the tight ends, as we saw, but the Saints don't really have a real tight end who's healthy right now. So it feels like the Jets should be able to hang around. The Saints are not a good offensive team, and so it's like, how many points like are they really going to score here? It's like, even if they get 20, the Jets can get 15 or more and cover the spread. And I think the Jets could even win outright. So I might bet the money line as well. But it seems like 5.5 is like pretty easy. I'm actually upset I didn't get 6 because the sharps bet that pretty early.
Yeah, they did, because I had seen 6 last night, and then I looked today and it had dropped. I think you're right. I think this is going to be a low scoring game. It's going to be a slog. It's going to be like 20-17 or 17-14 or something weird like that. Some weird numbers. Parrott pointed out that, as you mentioned, Zach Wilson could just throw a lot of interceptions. Could throw 3 to Lattimore. So I could see that happening, but at some point he's going to figure it out, and he's started to look at least decent against the Eagles. The mistakes are still going to be there, but who knows? Maybe he makes it through a little bit. And I like what you said. He likes to spread the ball around, and I like the Jets' group of receivers. If they could get a true, like if Corey Davis was healthy and they had Elijah Moore and Jameson Crowder and then all these guys, you'd look at that receiving core and be like, hey, that's not bad. That's pretty solid. Maybe get one more big weapon in there, but yeah, I don't dislike what the Jets have. It's just them putting it all together. So I think they're the right side for now.
Yeah, I mean, Wilson could definitely throw interceptions, but here's like a reason to be optimistic about him is that the Saints don't pressure the quarterback that well. Like they have the fourth least pressure rate in the NFL, like the 29th in the NFL, whereas the Eagles are above average, and they got a lot of pressure on Wilson in the second half, and they force him into the mistakes. The Saints don't really do that, so Wilson should have time in the pocket, and like as we all know, young quarterbacks with pressure really struggle even more so than the veterans, but when they have time in the pocket, they can do okay. So I think Wilson could have one of his better games, kind of like he had against Tennessee or Cincinnati. Just feels like one of those games where Salah's going nuts on the sideline and like weird things happen and the Jets find a way to win and ruin their draft positioning. Yeah,
no, I could definitely see that happening. But it's fun to see Robert Saleh pumped up too. He's a very expressive dude on those sidelines.
Yeah, he's awesome. I love when the Jets are competitive, or beforehand when the Niners were pulling an upset. Like you just see him going crazy. So he's definitely fun to watch. All right, next game is on the card. It says 49ers Bengals, but that game was moved to 4:25. So we'll discuss that in a little bit. The next game chronologically is Jaguars at the Titans. Line open up Titans -10. It's down to -9.5. Looks like there's sharp money coming in on Jacksonville. So who do you like in this game?
Yeah, I mean, I have Jacksonville down, which seems, horrible. I don't want to be on Urban Meyer's side. Like you said, this is going to be an ugly card this week. Like some of the teams we're going to be forced to trust are not fun to be on that side. I've got Jacksonville here, and I know that they're not good, and Urban Meyer is not a good coach, and he's the exact opposite of Robert Saleh. He only is expressive when he looks like he's been hit by a train on the sideline because his team is making some sort of horrible mistake. But is this Titans offense good? I don't think it is right now. You're without Derrick Henry. You're without A.J. Brown. Julio Jones might come off IR for this game. That'll have a big impact on my unit count here. But if he doesn't come back off IR, who are your receiving weapons? Des Fitzpatrick, Cody Hollister, and Nick Westbrook-Akina. Like, again, these are some guys that I kind of like. Like, they have some upside, but you don't want those guys as your top 3 receivers. You'd want them rotating in and battling for that number 3 receiver spot, which is, obviously the plan. But when you're without your top 2 receivers, that's a massive problem, no matter what defense you're facing. And if you look at the Titans, their offense has only scored 13 points in each of the last 2 games. And I know one of those games was against the Patriots and they got into the red zone a lot and just didn't come away with points. But the other one was against the Texans. And I mean, the Texans are terrible. So I think, if Ryan Tannehill, I know he had 4 interceptions that game, but part of the problem is he doesn't have any weapons to throw to, so he might be forced into mistakes or forced to throw into windows that aren't really open. So I think them as 9.5-point favorites is way too much. I think Jacksonville will come ready enough to, keep this close. Again, this could be a low-scoring game, but if Tennessee gets like 20 points, I think Jacksonville can pick up 11. Like, I'm not overly confident in that because Urban Meyer could just start punting on first down every play and be like, I don't know why I did that. I forgot I had a quarterback because, he put an injured James Robinson in a 30-point loss like last week on the final drive, which was asinine, and then was asked about it and was like, oh yeah, I don't really know why I did that. That was not smart. It's like, you could have controlled it. Anyway, I'm making fun of him right now, but I'm going to be on Team Urban Meyer for plus 9.5 points. 1 to 2 units. I might drop it to 0 if Julio Jones plays. It'll depend on what he does in practice this week.
Yeah, I'm betting Jacksonville as well. Like I said, it was a ugly card. I'm higher on Jacksonville than you are, actually. Julio Jones coming back is important for Tennessee because, like you said, they don't have any other receivers really. But like, is it that important? Like, he hasn't been great this year. Like, he's not like the dominant force he once was. He's kind of past his prime. And even recent years, like, he did a lot of his damage in garbage time with Matt Ryan. And like now, he just hasn't been the same receiver. It's like mostly Derrick Henry and AJ Brown who are the most important pieces of this offense. And like you said, since they lost those two guys, they've scored 13 points in each of their past 2 games. 13 points against Houston is just not going to give you any confidence here. And Jacksonville's defense isn't that bad. Like they get a lot of pressure on the quarterback. If Shaq Griffin comes back, he's a legit number 1 corner. This year at least, he's been pretty good. Jacksonville struggles defending the middle of the field. But Tennessee doesn't really use its tight ends, and who's their slot receiver really? It feels like Jacksonville should be able to be competitive. You mentioned if Tennessee gets to 20, Jacksonville has to get to 11. We know they could do that against Tennessee because they got 19 the last time they played Tennessee. So if they get 19 this time, Tennessee needs 29 to cover the spread. And maybe if they get a couple of pick sixes, yeah, that could happen. But otherwise, I really don't see it happening. I just think this line's too high. And I think the theme, as we'll see for this week, is mediocre teams to subpar teams. And Tennessee, when healthy, is definitely not mediocre. But right now they are. Mediocre to subpar teams being favored by way too many points this week, even over horrible teams. Jacksonville's horrible, but they should not be plus 9.5 here. This line should be plus 6.5. And that kind of goes with Mike Vrabel being he's 3-6 against the spread as a favorite of 7 or more in his career. And most of that's with Derrick Henry, by the way. So, this line's way too high.
Yeah, my whole thing is it's just never appealing to bet on Urban Meyer for me because, he can just – his game planning is really bad. But, I think you're dead right. This is way too high of a line. We're going through all sorts of key numbers here. When I first saw this matchup, I was like, all right, well, Titans probably somewhere around 6, and it's up near 10. And I was like, whoa, that's kind of a lot. And then I was like, well, do I really want to bet on Urban Meyer? And you logic your way through it. And I think no matter what, Jacksonville looks like the right side unless this line drops significantly.
Yeah, thinking about it this way, too. Last week, the Rams were minus 12.5 at this time against Jacksonville. So you're saying the Rams at full strength are 3 points better than the Titans missing Derrick Henry and AJ Brown. This just doesn't make sense at all. This line just not priced correctly. It's the sports books saying, okay, that people aren't going to bet the Jaguars, so we're setting this low, or setting this too high rather. So yeah, it just doesn't make any sense.
Yeah.
All right, next game should be more competitive. The Ravens at the Browns. This line opened up Browns -1. It's up to -2.5 because of sharp action, it seems like, on Cleveland. So who do you like in this game?
Yeah, I like Cleveland a lot. I'm with the Sharps here. The Ravens are a team to fade right now because they're dealing with so many injuries. I mean, their secondary is a mess. They just lost Marlon Humphrey. So they're without Marlon Humphrey. They're without Marcus Peters. They're without Deshaun Elliott at safety. That's 3 starters right there that they do not have. So that's a massive deal for this team. And I know that the Browns haven't been great passing the ball this year. Baker Mayfield's had trouble, but he's also been very, very injured. He has a torn labrum in his non-throwing shoulder and all sorts of other heel, knee, back, ankle. I've lost track, honestly, between him and Matthew Stafford, who has what. But Mayfield just had a week off. He had a bye week. And the Browns are going to probably have given him plenty of rest and rehab. So he'll hopefully be at least a little bit healthier and able to move and play through it. And I know that's not the most enticing thing in the world, but against this secondary, if you can just get the ball out of his hands quick and avoid getting him getting hit, I think he's going to be in okay enough shape. And, Jarvis Landry was good in the last game against the Ravens, so he'll be good again, especially without Marlon Humphrey available. And, oh, yeah, that's the other thing. They just played the Ravens before the bye. They've had a week off, and they've been able to spend this entire time self-scouting how they played against the Ravens and prepping for it. So the coaching staff of the Browns is going to have had a massive advantage because they were specifically breaking down, here's what we did against Baltimore, and here's how we can beat them next time. Meanwhile, Baltimore has spent a whole week preparing for a game against its arch rival, the Steelers. They're coming off a deflating loss against them, during which they went for 2 on the last play correctly. Terrific decision, bad result for John Harbaugh there. And Harbaugh, after the game, said we didn't have enough corners. That's why he went for 2. So I get that they're going to be able to add corners and, get some people healthier for this game, but their back end could be a complete mess in this one. So I think Baker Mayfield, Kevin Stefanski, they're going to figure out a way to attack that. So as long as they're getting less than 3 points here in this game, I like Cleveland a lot, even with the line movement. I'm with the Sharps. The advantage here is with Cleveland, and I might lock this in before it goes over 3 if it looks like that's a possibility.
Yeah, we got a question asking if it was going to get to 3. There's a lot of sharp money on Cleveland, so I think that's definitely possible. And even if it gets to 3, I think that's a sign that the Browns are the right side, because it might entice the public to bet even more on Baltimore +3. I mean, everything you said is definitely right about this game. It's such a weird scheduling dynamic for Cleveland, where all they've had to do is think about what they did wrong in Baltimore, where they only lost by 6. It was really a 3-point game until a late field goal. And if you think about it, Lamar Jackson had that weird play where he drifted back a mile in the backfield and threw a touchdown to Mark Andrews. That won the game, and it was such a fluky play. And we know it was fluky because he tried the same thing against Pittsburgh and he got interception. It's going to be a pick more often than not if you do something like that. And Jackson's a special player, but even he can't do that. He threw 4 interceptions against the Browns last time. Cleveland has a good defense. They should be able to limit him. And then, like you said, the Ravens are just missing so many players on the defensive backfield. I wish the Browns had better receivers to take advantage of it. The receivers aren't good outside of Landry, but maybe Donovan Peoples-Jones, we've seen him make some big plays. Maybe he gets a long touchdown or something like that. I could definitely see that happening. So overall, I like the Browns. I'm a little worried about Baker Mayfield's health. He's had a week off to heal, so maybe he's going to be 100%. But then again, we had Matthew Stafford with a week off to heal, and then he wasn't 100% against Green Bay. So we just don't know. That's the only hang up I have here is Mayfield's status. So if we get any positive reports during the week, even though they're going to be hard to believe just based on the injury reports, then I'll be even more bullish on the Browns. But I still like the Browns enough to bet them.
Yeah, and I think it all comes down to how comfortable you are with Baker Mayfield. That's the real unit count changer here for me. And my whole thing is I get it. He's looked terrible. He's looked so hurt, right? I feel bad for him that he's trying to play through this. But, we'll have to wait and see what happens. But I always think that bye week should help, but it didn't help Stafford, like you said. So maybe I got to pull back a little bit. I agree with you on Peoples-Jones. He's a guy I'm probably going to play in DFS contests because, he could go wild. He's averaging 18.9 yards per catch this year. So if, he goes deep and he's playing against Anthony Averett or someone, whoever the number 1 corner in Baltimore ends up being, he can definitely beat them. It's just a matter of can Mayfield get the ball to him. So, I just think they have such an advantage. What a weird scheduling thing for the NFL. I wonder if they were testing this as one of those things. All right, well, this works. We normally wouldn't do this, but let's see if Cleveland comes out and just crushes Baltimore with the extra self-scout time. So I'm very interested for this. I will probably lock in on this soon just because I don't want it to get to 3.5, even though it would still probably be the right side.
Yeah, I was actually thinking about that. Is the NFL testing something where they can have back-to-back matchups? I don't know if they would. It would just be too weird in a long season, and I think it would give a huge disadvantage to a team that's injured, in the divisional rivalry. But I don't know. It's something I always thought about. Like, it would be interesting to see. Like, you always see that in the NBA and NHL because their seasons are so long. They give so many games. We never see that in the NFL, so it's kind of unique. So I'm looking forward to it as well. And yeah, by the way, in DFS, I'm going to be playing Peoples Jones. Especially in the showdown slates, like the single game showdown slates. I like those a lot. I like players like Peoples Jones because like they can always break a long touchdown and they're cheap. And like if they do, they're a good captain. I like using guys like that. Like Valdez Scantling, like Quez Watkins in Philadelphia, like just guys who have or are priced low but have big potential because they can always break a long touchdown.
Yep, Deshaun Jackson made me some money on Thanksgiving doing that, so that was nice.
Yeah, that's like the one time I didn't do it for some reason. I don't know. Like, I guess I was like too busy and like I was just forgot about it. But yeah, just Jackson's another one of those guys. All right, next game, Falcons at the Panthers. This line opened up Panthers -3. An hour before we started recording, it dropped to 2.5. So it looks like sharp money on Atlanta. So with that in mind, who do you like here?
I'm mad that the Sharps did that when I wasn't paying attention because I'm on Atlanta here with them. If you look at the Falcons' numbers this season, there's a trend that stands out. I think I talked about it a couple weeks ago when they played Jacksonville. But if you look at Football Outsiders' DVOA metric, the Falcons are very, very good against teams that are in the bottom like quartile to bottom 10 of the NFL in DVOA. They've played 5 teams in the bottom 10 this year, and they have a 4-1 record against them. Straight up. Giants, Jets, Dolphins, Jaguars, and their one loss, this is going to be weird, was against the Panthers. So why would I trust them in this matchup? Well, there are a couple reasons. One, at the time they played against the Panthers were significantly better. They were ranked more towards the 16th through 19th range in DVOA. And, after their last few games, they've dropped significantly because their quarterback play has been so bad. And the other thing is, if you look at the game against the Panthers from earlier in the season, that was the first week that Calvin Ridley was out since he decided to take the mental health break, which, again, good for him. I'm glad he's getting the help he needs. But it was difficult that week for Atlanta because they were without him. They were without Russell Gage, I don't think played either. So they had a skeleton core at receiver. So it was very tough for them to compete, but it was still a 19-13 game. So they were able to limit Sam Darnold. I know Cam Newton's quarterback in the Panthers now, but he looked terrible before the bye against the Dolphins. Maybe he'll be back and a little bit better with some rest, but I still think the Falcons will find a way to slow down this hapless offense. And they'll at least have Gage in this game too. So I think that'll help the Falcons as well. So I'm going to be on the Falcons here for probably 1 or 2 units. I think they're good against bad teams, and I think the Panthers are a bad team. And, you can argue that the Falcons are too, but I think I'd rather take them as an underdog in this situation. It's when they become favorites that I'm like, all right, well, that's probably not the best bet.
Yeah, I'm on Atlanta too. Disappointed as well to see the line drop. I was kind of surprised when I was making these like graphics, these fancy graphics we have on the bottom if you're watching YouTube. I think, like, first of all, this is gonna be a low scoring game, I think. So that kind of automatically made me gravitate toward the underdog. And second, I think Atlanta's defense, which sounds weird, matches up well against Carolina's offense. You might think like that's crazy. Atlanta has a terrible defense, but they've actually improved a little bit lately. AJ Terrell has been amazing, and he should be able to handle DJ Moore. And Atlanta's run defense isn't that bad either. So I think they'll be able to stop the Panthers, who won't have Christian McCaffrey. It's a big deal. Atlanta's still weak, though, on defense in the middle of the field. We saw that last week when Tom Brady just kept throwing to Chris Godwin in the slot, and also Rob Gronkowski caught a couple touchdowns. Carolina doesn't really have anyone to take advantage of this with McCaffrey out. So, like, who's Cam Newton going to throw to? Like Brandon Zylstra, Tommy Tremble, Amir Abdullah. Like, these guys aren't going to beat Atlanta. And I think Atlanta should be able to move the ball enough. As you said, they're going to have Gage this week instead of, they didn't have him last time. So I think the Falcons, with Cordell Patterson especially, I think he's going to have a big game against Carolina's run defense. I think the Falcons are the right side. I think they'll win outright, but kind of sad to not have the +3. I think I was going to bet the +3 at +2.5. Little dicier, not to get the +3. Maybe we could bet up the +3. Like maybe it's like -125 somewhere. That's definitely worth it.
Yeah, you can shop around for a -3 or rather +3. That would definitely be a good move. If not, I like this as a teaser option because you can get it up to 8.5, which would be pretty appealing. I think. I don't think the Panthers are going to blow out the Falcons. Parrott just mentioned Joe Brady was fired too. Yeah, that's going to play a big role here. That whatever coaching experiment's going on in Carolina does not seem to be working in the second season because Matt Rule's offense has not come to life. And I don't think that was Joe Brady's fault. He has not had anything to work with at quarterback. And great, the Teddy Bridgewater's played better this year than he did last year. So you look at that, but they wanted to move on for Darnold. Like, that's not Joe Brady's fault. And maybe he just wanted to move on or go somewhere else. But yeah, Matt Rule, I think his seat's heating up a bit. I don't know if David Tepper would get rid of him after 2 seasons. But if they need another new quarterback, it also wouldn't surprise me if they're like, Matt Rule, this is not going well. I don't think we're going to keep you. So I want to see what happens there. But this is kind of the problem with what happens if you hire a coach that only has 1 year of NFL experience in general. Matt Rule, great college coach, but the transition to the pro level can be difficult.
Yeah, that firing of Joe Brady made so little sense that I thought that maybe he had a job lined up and he asked to be let go. Like, otherwise, like, you're going to blame a guy who barely had Christian McCaffrey. I think like 10 out of the 24 possible games or 27 possible games, whatever it was. Like, he's barely had McCaffrey, not even half the games. And then he had to work with Sam Darnold and a decrepit Cam Newton. Last year, Bridgewater, who actually did pretty well considering, and then Philip Walker. Like, those were his 4 quarterbacks, and you're going to fire a guy over that. Like, it just doesn't make any sense. If this was a legitimate firing and Brady wasn't let go for reasons why he wanted to, I just think it's like a total panic move, and it just shows that Matt Rule doesn't belong in the NFL, which we kind of both suspected in the first place.
Yeah, and one more thing about the whole Joe Brady thing. I forgot it. Hold on. It's somewhere in there. Yeah, here it is. Every fan base that has heard that he's been fired is like, oh, I want my team to hire him.
Right.
Like, that's usually not a good sign. Like, if someone gets let go and other teams are – same thing with Ron Rivera when the Panthers let Rivera go, which granted, they needed a change probably. But Rivera got let go, and immediately Washington was like, oh, man, we got to get this guy. And I think the Giants, I think, had an interest in him. Maybe the Cowboys, too. So, you can't let a guy go and then there be immediate interest by almost every team out there. That's a bad sign.
Yeah, not just NFL teams, but college teams, I'm sure. I feel like most college teams would love to have him coordinating them or even be a head coach, if you're not the elite of the college teams, because like maybe the second or third tier. All right, next game, we have the Cowboys at the Redskins. This line opened up Cowboys -5. It's down to -4, even -3.5 at a couple of sports books. I'm seeing looks like sharp action on the Redskins. So who do you like here?
Yeah, I don't like this game very much. This one's kind of tough to figure. Like, on the one hand, Washington's offense doesn't look like it would have enough firepower to keep pace with the Cowboys. On the other hand, their defense could give Dak Prescott some trouble. And if they kind of grind the clock like they have against these other teams and just don't give Dallas an opportunity to possess the ball, kind of do what they did to the Seahawks and Russell Wilson, that could make for a very frustrating game for Cowboys bettors. So I'm very torn on this one. I have Dallas penciled in right now just because I think it's going to be tough for the Washington offense. If they can't control the clock, it's going to be hard for their defense to, limit Prescott and company to under 20 points. And Washington has averaged, I believe, or actually they're allowing 17.4 points per game in their last 5, but they've had trouble getting up to that like 17-point mark themselves. So, if Dallas gets to 20, can Washington get to 20? I think they could, but I don't know. I'm just not willing to bet on it. I don't have really good, strong stats or back on this one. So I'm very interested to hear what you have to say because I'm very torn on this.
Yeah, I mean, I could see why. Like, I was kind of surprised that the Sharps are on the Redskins because I think Dallas matches up pretty well against Washington. First of all, on offense, the Redskins are pretty weak in the secondary. They allow a lot of big plays downfield. And the Raiders couldn't really take advantage of that last week. The Seahawks, they did at times. with Wilson, but he wasn't 100%. But the Cowboys should be able to. Like, they have all the receivers healthy. Amari Cooper wasn't 100% last week, but he's had extra time to heal. So I feel like he's going to be closer to 100%. And they still have, obviously, CD Lamb, Michael Gallup. Just feels like the Cowboys should be able to attack Washington's secondary like pretty easily. And you mentioned the Redskins just sitting on the ball. Like, they love doing that. They're so good on third down recently. The two issues though, like, first, they lost Logan Thomas, which I think is a huge deal. And second, Dallas is actually second in third down defense. Baltimore's first, Dallas is second. So that the Cowboys, if they live up to that billing, they should be able to get off the field more than other teams have had recently. So I just think Dallas matches so well, like, which is why I'm so shocked that the Sharps are on the Redskins. Maybe they just think this line's way off. I don't know. The advanced spread was -4.5, so it's like not that much value. Actually, we have value on Dallas now. So I'm going to see if this line keeps going down. The Sharps haven't really bet the -4 yet. So if they do, and this gets to 3 eventually, I'm going to have a lot of interest on Dallas. At -4, only a little bit of interest. So it really depends on where the spread goes.
Yeah, I agree with you. I think the Cowboys match up pretty well. That was my big thing, is they have 3 really good receivers, and William Jackson III started the year terribly, but he's played much better lately, so he can take away one of them. But then the other spots, you have Kendall Fuller, Benjamin St. Juste is on IR, so I don't know who they have playing in the slot right now. I think it's Danny Johnson, actually. So, you figure that Amari Cooper and Michael Gallup should be able to beat Kendall Fuller and Danny Johnson at least a good chunk of the time. So I think that's the big thing for me. This just doesn't feel like a game that the way Washington's playing is going to be able to win. And I don't think they're going to be able to use their defense to stop Dallas enough to cover a +4 spread. But we're interested to see if the sharp action continues, because if so, maybe they know something, but I'm still going to like Dallas, I think.
Yeah, and I'm rooting for Washington because I have 2 bets that are probably going to lose. I have the Redskins to win the division, which I made back in July, and I had the Cowboys not to make the playoffs. So I don't think they're going to pan out. But, if Washington wins out, they win the division. So at least that one would work. So we'll see. Last of the early games, the Seahawks at the Texans. This line opened up Seahawks -8. It's down to 7.5. Sharps are on Houston. So who do you like here?
I can't do it. I can't bet. I'm sorry. I can't bet Davis Mills. We've been over this before. I know. I get it. Seattle's not good. They're coming off of a win, so people are like, oh, Seattle's good again. They have Russell Wilson, but I can't bet Davis Mills. I know the Seahawks don't have a good defense, but the Texans have averaged 12.2 points per game when Davis Mills starts. That includes 4 outings that were single-digit games that they've scored, and the max they've ever scored with him, they did it twice, 22 points. So I get it. That means that Seattle would have to score 30 points to basically guarantee that they would cover this spread. I don't think that's a shoe-in by any means or any stretch, but they just scored 30 on the 49ers. So I think they could do it against this Texans defense, which, is better than people thought it would be because of Lovie Smith. But also, David Culley keeps randomly benching his best defenders because they're showing up to things late, which is, a good culture move. But at the same time, you want your best guys on the field. I would maybe not suspend him for showing up late once. Maybe there's something more to it. It's been Zach Cunningham and Justin Reed that he's done this with, to my knowledge, at least. Unless I fever dreamt one of those, which is always possible. But I can't bet the Texans. Maybe the Seahawks will look ahead to the matchup with the Rams, but I think they're desperate to win and stay on the outskirts of this. So I don't think they're going to overlook Houston. I'm not confident in this. So I've got a 0 to 1 unit bet here. But I just can't bring myself to back Davis Mills. We don't know what version is going to show up, the really terrible one or the surprisingly decent one.
Yeah, so I'm on Houston. It's just an ugly card, like I said. In fact, I'm gonna bet them, for 3 units, I think. And I know Davis Mills, right? But here's the defense of Davis Mills. Hear me out. So in his games this year, look at the past defense DVOAs he's played. Carolina 5th, Bills 1st, Patriots 2nd, Colts 15th, okay, Cardinals 3rd, and Rams 11th. Like, he has not played a defense ranked in the bottom half of pass defense DVOA. The Seahawks are 26th in pass defense DVOA. So you're going to say something?
Oh no, I'm just breathing deeply because you're like you're getting in my head about this now.
Right. Yeah. So like Davis Mills is terrible, but he hasn't played an easy matchup yet. And this is an easy matchup. So I think there's some hope for the Texans to score some points, like not get single digits again. Like maybe they get 17, maybe they get 20. And Seattle, like, I'm just not convinced they're back yet. Like, they beat the 49ers last week. Part of that came on the kickoff return fumble, and then there was a safety. The 49ers outgained the Seahawks. They averaged 1.6 more yards per play than the Seahawks. Like, it was not the most convincing win. And like you said, the Seahawks coming off that big win, they have the Rams next week. Now, like, they're not in a position to look ahead. Like, they're 4-8. But still, like, if you're the Seahawks, like, are you going to be like, okay, we need to really focus on the Texans here, with the Rams coming up? Like, I just don't see it. Like, I don't see them bringing 100%. And this line's too high for Seattle. Like, ever since they've lost a good chunk of the roster, so, like, starting in 2017, I was shocked by how bad this was. Like, as favorites of 6 or more since that year, they're 5-13 against the spread. They just have not covered these high spreads. And so this is just another case where we have a subpar team that's favored by way too many points, albeit against a terrible team, Houston. But still, I think the Texans should be able to keep this game close. They kept the Patriots game close earlier in the year. So maybe that's a sign that'll happen again. So yeah, I'm going to be on Houston, and then I'm going to be kicking myself when they're down 20-0.
It's really difficult to like bat. We've both done it this year where we've talked ourselves into Houston because they've had a result that went against what we expected. And I get where you're coming from. The DVOA numbers particularly have been swaying me because the more I look at certain DVOA trends, like it is a very predictive stat, but I'm going to stick with the Seahawks for now. I'm going to say I would not recommend betting the Seahawks. I want to see where this line lands. And if it sticks around here, probably wouldn't bet it. But if it gets down to 7, maybe I'd consider it. But I have not been good against Houston this year. So I think I'm going to pass on this one.
Yeah, so I don't blame you, but yeah, like I said, it's just one of those weeks where you just have to take the ugly team because the subpar team is favored by way too many points. But I think this is our only disagreement in the early slate, not counting Thursday, but in the early Sunday slate. So it's pretty good, I think. All right, next game. Let's move on to the late afternoon slate. This is the Lions at the Broncos. This line opened up Broncos minus 8.5. It's down to 8, even 7.5 in some sports books. Looks like the sharps are on the Lions. So is this another horrible team that we're going to pick this week?
It is. This was another one. This card was bad enough that I legitimately had to write a few times. I will decide during the podcast. This is one of them. I like Denver as a team. I think they're going to bounce back. I think they're going to win this game, but favoring them by 8 at home it's not terrible, but I think the Lions are going to come out juiced for this one coming off their first win. Like, I get it. Usually a team that hasn't won a lot, you would think, oh, they won, they're going to like relax in their next game. But I don't necessarily think that's the case for Dan Campbell and the Lions because they've been hearing all year about, oh, this team's terrible. What if they don't win? What if this happens? And they just won. And now people are like, oh, they got their win. Now they can cruise out and lose the rest of the season. I don't think that's guaranteed that will happen. I think they have a couple of winnable games down the stretch. This is one of them. I still think Denver is significantly better as a team than Detroit talent-wise. But if Detroit plays hard, they're going to have a chance to cover an 8-point spread. The Broncos have played a bunch of close games this season. And I know that they played better against the Chiefs than it appeared. But, we don't know how healthy Teddy Bridgewater is. We don't know what the weather's going to be like in Denver. So if it's windy again or if it's snowy, it might be hard for him to throw the ball. It'd be hard for Jared Goff, too. Don't get me wrong. But, Goff showed a little something last week. There's no reason he can't go tete-a-tete with Bridgewater here. I see this as a game that's going to be decided late. We've seen a lot of Lions games decided by a field goal. We've seen some pretty close ones finish, too. So I'm going to be on the Lions here. I, again, think Denver's the better team. I would never consider betting. I don't want to say never, but I would not consider betting the Lions money line here or anything. But I see this being a touchdown game. We're getting at least an extra point of value here.
Yeah, who's Denver to be favored by 8 over anyone really? Like this offense is just so limited, I think. Like granted, Javonte Williams looked great against Kansas City, and yet they scored just 9 points. Like like a team's favored by 8 and they just scored 9. Just doesn't seem right, does it? Like I was looking back at like Teddy Bridgewater's record as like a high favorite. He just isn't favored by many points. Like I think the only instance was earlier this year when he was a 10-point favorite against the Jets and they covered. That was Zach Wilson in his third game playing against Vic Fangio. Jared Goff, obviously not a great quarterback by any means, but he's a veteran and like he's not that bad against the blitz. Denver blitzes a lot, so he should be able to do fine. I actually like Detroit here in this matchup against Denver because Detroit likes to attack the middle of the field with the running back and Amon-Ra St. Brown in the slot and TJ Hawkinson, and Denver is really bad against the middle of the field ever since they lost their 2 linebackers. So I feel like the line should be able to move the ball. And meanwhile, like Detroit's pass rush isn't that bad. Like they're 10th in pressure rate somehow. So they should be able to put some heat on Bridgewater, slow that offense down. It just feels like this is going to be like a 20-17 type game. It's going to be close. And like my first instinct about like seeing the Lions win, like how they celebrated, it's like, all right, they're not going to be focused for this game. They're going to celebrate too hard after their first win. And kind of like you talked about how Dan Campbell is going to fire up his team. I actually look back and like teams that started 0-10 or worse and won their first game, they're 5-5 against the spread in the next game. So it's not like a dynamic you can automatically fade. Even last year, when the Jets won the first game, they upset the Rams as like huge underdogs. They ended up beating the Browns the following week. So I think the Lions should be able to hang tough with Denver. This is a slide. It's just again a subpar team favored by way too many points. I think the Lions are going to cover the spread, and it wouldn't surprise me at all if they won outright. I just don't think Denver is that good, and I think the Lions have some nice matchup edges in this game.
Yeah, I still think Denver wins because if Detroit wins, Vic Fangio's seat is charred. It's just you'd be gone. So, and we've talked in previous years of this podcast or episodes that we wanted to see Vic Fangio get like a full year, have his team mostly healthy. And I know he still dealt with injuries this year, but I feel like they've stayed healthy enough and we're just not seeing it. So his seat's getting hot. The Broncos might make a change, especially where they're probably considering drafting another quarterback with Bridgewater looking only okay and Drew Lock showing nothing in his one limited appearance in relief of Bridgewater. So we'll see what ends up happening, but I still like Fangio as a defensive-minded coach. But the poor guy just is not very good at a head coach right now, and he's apparently not very good in the attractiveness ratings because I saw a poll that had him ranked dead last in terms of NFL coach attractiveness, which I thought was very rude. But I figured I should bring it up to let the people know.
Yeah, and somehow Belichick was high on that list, which is a little puzzling. I think it was number one is like Matt LaFleur, I think, right?
I think so, yeah. I think, yeah, we talked about this last week. I still, that's just like stuck in my head now. Poor guy, that's going to follow him around like in my head his whole life. It's like, oh yeah, Vic Fangio, the least attractive coach in 2021.
Right. And Ron Rivera got the shaft too, I think, because he looks like Edward James almost, Commander Adama from Battlestar Galactica. So he got to give him credit for that at least. We had a question here. What is our spread record this year? It's I think like I'm close to 500 right now, but it was pretty ugly to begin the year, and I've been hot recently, or at least hotter recently. So it was much better last year, but I think we're coming on at least. I don't know if you know off the top of your head.
Yeah, I'm 89, 103, and 2. So I'm a little sub 500, but it's gotten better in recent weeks. So last year we were hitting at like a 60% clip the first half of the season. Then we hit a bad slump and got hot at the end of the year. Kind of have done the opposite this year, but I'm hoping we stay hot at the end of the year instead of, tailing off.
Yeah, a lot of weird results this year, like the Niners not covering that week 1 against Detroit. That Cowboys Patriots game that went to overtime, the Cowboys won. That Packers Redskins game where the Redskins, I think, outgained the Packers and somehow didn't cover a double-digit spread. Like a lot of weird results this year. But yeah, it feels like things are coming back to normal in recent weeks. For at least for the most part, there was still that Monday night game against the Buffalo New England game, which is pretty rough. But yeah, overall, I think we're doing better. Moving on, the Giants at the Chargers. This line opened up Chargers minus 10.5. It's still 10.5. We don't know who the Giants quarterback is going to be. It sounds like it might be Jake Fromm, but it still could be, I guess, someone else. So who do you like in this game?
I'm hoping it'll be Jake Fromm because I liked him in the draft process the year he came out and he went in the 5th round. And I was surprised. I want to just see what he looks like at the pro level because I've only really seen him late in preseason games in his 2nd year, and he looked okay for the Bills. But anyway, I have the Giants penciled in here, but I'm not betting this without seeing the injury report because there's a lot of questions on both sides of the ball. Obviously, for the Giants, it's who's playing quarterback. If it's Jake Fromm, I can't imagine this point spread stays at 10.5, or maybe I'm wrong. Maybe it does, but I don't know. Trusting him as a 10.5 point underdog sounds okay, but against Justin Herbert, it doesn't stack up that well. But the Chargers have bad run defense, so Saquon Barkley's probably going to have a big game. And I think the other thing is the Chargers are banged up a bit at receiver. Keenan Allen's on the COVID list, so we don't know if he's going to play. If he's out for this game, then that makes the Giants double-digit underdogs more appealing no matter who they have at quarterback, because Mike Williams is also banged up. And then you're talking about, all right, Jalen Guyton's our top pass catcher. And that's, I like Jalen Guyton enough as a rotational guy, but you don't want him as your number one threat against a good defense. Like, the Giants have a pretty solid defense. They'll be able to get some pressure on Justin Herbert, I think, with their defensive line. And, if he doesn't have receivers, he's going to have to wait longer in the pocket for people to break open. So they would just focus on slowing down Austin Eckler. So that's why I have the Giants penciled in right now, because I'm assuming that everyone we think is going to be out in this game is going to be out. So, if that ends up being the case, I like the Giants. But, if Keenan Allen plays and Mike Williams is able to play through the injuries he's been dealing with, then that makes the Chargers probably look like the better side if Jake Fromm's at quarterback. So I'll say it like this. Check in with me later in the week to get my full exact pick here. But for now, I'm looking at the Giants as the right side.
Yeah, me too. For me, it matters about the Giants receivers as well, because we don't know who's going to play there. We had Kadarius Toney, Sterling Shepard, both missed last week's game. And then when Kenny Galladay got hurt in the 2nd quarter, I was like, that's it. And they ended up dropping 6 passes, just so brutal to watch. Galladay's banged up. He's probably going to play. He returned last week, and then he kind of sat out the 4th quarter, or at least a bit of it. But I feel like Galladay would play, but he may not be 100%. So you kind of need one of the Sterling Shepard or Kadarius Toney to play for the Giants to be competitive here. But even still, like the Giants haven't allowed, except for their game against the Buccaneers, got out of hand. They've allowed they haven't allowed more than 20 points since week 6. Like, their defense has been really good. They even played the Chiefs pretty closely. And so this line kind of mirrors what it was against the Chiefs. And you have to wonder, it's like really the Chargers are as big a favorites against the Giants as the Chiefs were. Like, I know that Daniel Jones may not play, but like, Daniel Jones is not good. Like, I can't believe the feedback I got last week when I like the Giants more with Mike Glennon because the spread rose than with Daniel Jones when the spread was low. It's like when was Daniel Jones a good quarterback? Like, he's like so bad, especially against teams that blitz a lot. The Chargers blitz like quite a bit, like not a super high rate, but a pretty high rate. That's why I would like the Giants a lot more if Mike Glennon came back from concussion. But if it's Jake Fromm, we don't know how he's going to play. Like, he hasn't taken a real snap yet in the NFL, but he was a smart guy in college. Like, he's going to get rid of the ball quickly. I feel like he would do better against the blitz than Daniel Jones, who just stands in the pocket forever and like doesn't do anything and like except throw turnovers. So I feel like the Giants are the right side, but kind of have to wait on injuries. You mentioned the Chargers ones. I think the Giants injuries matter as well. So we have to see what's going to happen.
Yeah, and I think Jake Fromm would be good against the blitz as well. His concern coming out was arm strength. Like, he did not have much of it. So if he plays, you're going to see a lot of dinking and dunking from the Giants. But, that might be just as well if they don't have, their full complement of receivers, because that would get the ball to his receivers in a catchable way. And then they try to make plays after the catch. Not an ideal situation, but maybe it could work. I would hope Glennon would start in terms of if I really wanted to bet the Giants in this one. But Fromm starts, I'm going to be excited to see what he does. I'll be interested to see how the spread moves too if he does start. And still probably be on the Giants, but going to wait and see what happens with all these injuries.
Yeah, you just need Fromm not to make mistakes, because the defense is going to hold the Chargers, maybe not to 20, but it's like a somewhat low amount, especially if Keenan Allen doesn't play. So, you don't need those pick sixes from Jake Fromm, which I don't think is going to happen. I think I'm with you where I think he's going to do a decent job, but his arm strength is pretty limited. So maybe he can kind of prove himself and like say, okay, I could be a number 2 quarterback in the NFL. I think that's like the best case for him. All right. Next game. This is the time change game. The 49ers at the Bengals. This line open up. Bengals -1. It's still -1. So who do you like here?
Yeah, this is one I'm torn on as well. This is, again, a specific injury angle I'm looking at. I have the 49ers penciled in right now because we saw what the Bengals looked like without 2 of their starting offensive linemen last week. I believe Riley Reef and Trey Hopkins were out, and it was not great. They were against the Chargers, who get some pressure. They blitz a lot, like you just mentioned. But they were missing Joey Bosa last week, who left very early with a head injury that thankfully was not a concussion. Brandon Staley just held him out just in case. So I think if those guys miss the game, the 49ers are going to be able to get a lot of pressure because they have Nick Bosa, who I think would play through the whole game, but I'm not sure. I can't predict injuries, but they have plenty of pass rushing talent up front. And then, Joe Burrow under duress had to fold a lot because he just didn't have the blocking. If those 2 linemen do play, then I might like the Bengals more because the 49ers' weakness on defense is their cornerbacks. And, we look at the Bengals receiver room, they've got 3 quality options and a, underrated tight end in CJ Uzama that can do some damage against this defense. So I think that the Bengals will be able to win if they can protect Joe Burrow, but if they can't, then I like the 49ers as 1-point underdog. So I have 49ers penciled in. I don't have any units on this yet. I need to see what happens here. But I think with the way the 49ers are playing, with how they match up with the Bengals in that scenario, I would like them.
Yeah. So, you talked about how Joe Burrow would do well with the offensive lineman, and I would normally agree, but he injured his finger last week,
Right.
dislocated pinky finger. And so he may not be 100%. Like I doubt he will be for this game. And like that's the main concern for me for the Bengals. So like even if the offensive linemen come back, like he's not guaranteed to do well, even though the 49ers are down their 2 top cornerbacks. So that's definitely an issue. For the 49ers, they have injury concerns as well. Deebo Samuel, we don't know if he's going to play. Fred Warner, his status unknown as well. So like having Samuel would be a huge boon to the 49ers because the Bengals are so bad at defending the middle of the field. Like they're going to be able to attack with George Kittle already, and like they can also get Deebo Samuel involved. Meanwhile, Fred Warner obviously would be key. Like he's one of the best defensive players or best linebackers in the NFL. So having him back would definitely help improve the defense. So especially with the corners out, like that's a big deal. And, stopping Joe Mixon, like that would help a lot. So, with Burrow's injured finger, I like the 49ers already, and we'll see how many units I bet. It just depends on who plays or not for either side.
Yeah, and I wrote a story about Burrow's injured finger the day it happened. Completely forgot about it. This is my forgotten injury of the week officially. So yeah, with him having a dislocated pinky on his throwing hand, yes, I definitely will not like the Bengals under any circumstances, even if those offensive linemen are back. Should be able to throw better, but we just don't know if he's going to be able to throw with strength or any sort of accuracy. So yeah, give me the 49ers there.
Yeah, Parrot's saying Elijah Mitchell and Jeff Wilson may be out. So like that's another reason why Deebo Samuel being back is big because like we've seen the Niners run with Deebo Samuel, who could just definitely do that too. So that's definitely a huge concern for the 49ers. Kyle Shanahan said he's hopeful Deebo's going to play, which is like not breaking news. Obviously, he's hopeful. So we'll see what happens, but that's definitely something to monitor later in the week. We have the big game of the week here, the Bills at the Buccaneers. This line opened up Buccaneers -3.5. It's kind of shading toward the 3. There's still some 3.5s out there, but looks like some sportsbooks have moved to 3 already. So who do you like in this game?
Yeah, I have the Bills here. Sean McDermott, we talked earlier in this. He coached an absolute travesty on Monday night. It was horrible, unbearable to watch, and I'm a Patriots fan. Like you remember, I found it unbearable because that's how bad the coaching was. And so the question becomes, will the Bills be able to bounce back from that? It's a short week. How are they going to feel after losing to their divisional rival? I think that they'll be able to bounce back. Not entirely certain of that, but I think they have a good chance because the Bucs defense presents a good matchup for them. Josh Allen will be able to throw the ball. The weather should be better in Tampa Bay, Florida. Like maybe it rains, but you're not going to get cold and 50-mile-an-hour winds and random snowstorms that I said wasn't going to happen in the morning, and then had to read a weather article about it, and then was like, it's probably not going to snow, and then it snowed. So yeah, amateur meteorologist Jacob is not very good at his job in that effort. But anyway, I think the offense for the Bills has an advantage. Their defense might be a little worse off because their run defense hasn't been great this season. So Leonard Fournette might be able to get a little something going. And Tre'Davious White's also gone, but they can get pressure on Tom Brady. They have a really deep and talented defensive line. So I think they can pressure him enough and force enough stops there. And they're going to be motivated in this one, I think, after losing. It was pretty embarrassing the way they lost. They outplayed the Patriots, and they just failed, basically. So I think the players are going to be wanting to bounce back. And, there was a question asked by a reporter about the Bills' embarrassing run defense. And basically, like Jordan Poyer and Micah Hyde, I think it was, were like, why would you say that? Like, our defense wasn't embarrassing. Like, we held them to 14 points. Like, they were pissed that they lost that game. So I think they're going to be really amped up to bounce back. This is a good spot for them. Obviously, like it better if we're getting 3.5, but even at 3, I think the Bills can keep this one close.
Yeah, I mean, except for that one run, they held the Patriots to 160 yards, 170 yards of offense. So yeah, it's like they allowed that big run, but outside of that, they did pretty well. So I can see why they'd be pretty miffed. And, it's a frustrating overall. Like if the Bills just game plan better, they would have won that game, maybe even covered. Who knows? So it was pretty frustrating. I'm on the Bills with you here. I think they match up well with the Buccaneers on both sides. You mentioned the Buccaneers being a pass funnel defense. So Josh Allen should be able to throw all over them, with all of his weapons. And then I feel like their defense matches up really well against Tom Brady. The trick to beating Tom Brady, which is extremely difficult, is to pressure him with 4 guys and not blitz, and then, cover well underneath. And the Bills should be able to do that. They have the number 1 pressure defense in the NFL. And they should be able to cover the Buccaneers receivers. I know that I know that Tre'Davious White being out is a concern, but they still cover well in the slot. So taking care of Chris Godwin should be good. And then they cover tight ends well too. So Rob Gronkowski is not going to go nuts. And we have not seen a quarterback this year do well against the Patriots against the Bills. Not one. If you look at like every quarterback they played. Not like a single quarterback has not done well. Like Ryan Tannehill probably had the best performance, and I think the Bills were just not focused in that game. So I think that this is going to be. I think this is going to be a Buffalo win. And to get plus 3.5 in some sports books, you can still do that. I like that a lot. Like I feel like this is going to be a 3-point game either way, and it's not surprising to me at all that the Sharps are betting Buffalo.
Yeah, no, it makes sense to me as well. And I was going to try to clap back at you and be like, well, Mac Jones had a good game and try to pull up some ridiculous quarterback stat numbers to prove that he was good throwing 3 passes. I mean, his passer rating was 84, but his QBR was a whopping 4.3. And that was probably just because he didn't have to do anything. But anyway, you're right. Most quarterbacks have not succeeded against the Bills' pass defense, which I think is why Bill Belichick just was like, let's not use Mac Jones, especially with the wind, and see what we can do.
Yeah, I feel like he could have gotten some completions with play action, given that like the Bills are playing like 9 men in the box at one point. But given how that game was going, I feel like Belichick was like, all right, we're just going to keep running, and like we'll see if you stop making mistakes. I feel like that's how he handled the game, and he was pretty happy to win at the end. It looks like we were discussing earlier before we started recording, felt like he knew he stole a victory there.
Yeah, he absolutely did. And I think if he had any real concerns about the Bills beating him at the end, which, you could argue he should have, but Bill Belichick's never going to think that if he has a game plan that's working. Definitely should have used more play action, especially when they were in the red zone looking for that touchdown going with the wind, because they would have caught the Bills. And just my dad said it even too. I was watching the game. He was like, why don't they do play action, sneak a tight end over the middle? No one's going to be there. They could have done that, but they just decided not to. So they kept running it and it somehow stole the game.
Yeah, I mean, they definitely could have done that. You can't really complain about a win. They came away with a victory there. But if the Bills didn't make mistakes, they would have had to do something like that, and they didn't. But so I guess we'll see what happens in the second game between these two teams, which I'm looking forward to. Sunday night game. A lot of people are not looking forward to this. I know people were complaining that this was not flexed out. It's the Bears at the Packers, but this game typically gets high ratings, so NBC is just going to keep it there. This line opened up Packers minus 12.5. It has not moved. So who do you like here?
Yeah, I like the Bears here. As crazy as that sounds, I just don't see what the big motivation would be for the Packers to beat them to a pulp in this one. I get it; it's a long time rivalry game, and Aaron Rodgers' motivation week to week could be he could be really amped up for this. He could be like, oh, I can basically end Matt Nagy's head coaching career with the Bears with the victory here. But I think that it might work the opposite. I think the Bears are going to look at this as their biggest remaining game. They're probably not going to make the playoffs. They're technically still alive in the playoff race. So I think they're going to pour really everything they have into this one and just see if they can find a way to keep it close with the Packers. I think the Packers are going to be, coming off of a bye week, maybe not entirely focused. Aaron Rodgers still dealing with a toe injury. We haven't seen the effects of it. And, again, coming off a bye week, you'd think he'd be better, but maybe the extra time off is like, oh, now my toe's hurting a little more, or he's not used to dealing with the pain. So I just think this is a situation for the Bears where it's like this is their Super Bowl. They might want to knock the Packers off their high horse. I think if the Packers win, they have a very good chance of winning the NFC North this week. I think the Vikings would have to lose Thursday and the Packers win Sunday night, and they would clinch the division. So I don't think the Bears want that to happen at their expense. That doesn't mean they're going to win, but a 12.5 point spread, I think they could cover. I'm not going to bet big on this because I don't like the idea of backing the Bears, whether it's with Andy Dalton or Justin Fields at quarterback. Matt Nagy's offense just hasn't been good. But think about it like this: the Bears ran the ball on the Cardinals last week. Can they do it against the Packers? I think they can do it enough. I think they can keep it within maybe high single digits. So I'll go with them at plus 12.5.
Yeah, this line's a little too high. The advanced spread was minus 11, and now it's 12.5. And so you have to ask, like, what happened last week? And we saw the Bears get demolished by Arizona, but it was 24 points that the Chicago offense gave to Arizona off turnovers, like the 4 Andy Dalton interceptions. Like if Andy Dalton didn't throw those interceptions, like the game would have been a lot closer, and then this line wouldn't have moved. And so it'd still be 11, maybe if they kept it close, maybe even 10.5. And so we're getting some value here in Chicago. So I think that's definitely worth taking into account. Also, you mentioned the motivational angle for the Bears. Like, this is their Super Bowl, really. I mean, yeah, you're right. They're not making the playoffs. So all they have left is to upset the Packers, which they would love to do, because this is, first of all, national TV, and second, it's their biggest rival. So beating the Packers would be like a nice feather in their cap for a season that's not going to go into the playoffs. And the Packers, they beat the Rams on basically national TV the week before. Or the game before, and they've had 2 weeks to hear about how great they were in that game. Then they have the Bears, who they already beat. So it's where's the motivation? And then next week they have Baltimore, and I think that could be like a possible Super Bowl preview, or at least they may think so. So I think the Packers are going to be looking ahead to Baltimore. If this were the first meeting between these two teams, I could see the Packers trying harder because this is a rivalry. But they already beat the Bears. So like you said, where's the motivation? And even in that game, that was a 10-point game. So why is the spread 12.5? It's like I said, it's too high. I'm not as high on this game as I am with the other crappy teams that we're picking. This is another crappy team. But it's different here because unlike the Saints and the Titans without their 2 stars, and the Seahawks and the Broncos, the Packers are not a mediocre to subpar team. They're actually a really good team. But I think given the motivational angle and the high spread, I just think that this line's too high.
Yeah, it doesn't make sense that the Packers would come out super motivated for this one because they, like you said, they already beat the Bears, and to have a rivalry, you need 2 teams that are playing well. I feel like over a long period of time. And I get that, like, over the entire history of this rivalry, it's been pretty even. But the Packers have won 20 of the last 23 meetings. So
Yeah.
it has been practically non-competitive. So they might think they can cruise to a victory, and they very well could. Chicago could get up 20-0 in this game, and if Aaron Rodgers decides that he wants to keep playing, they can win. So, that's how I feel about this one. I'm glad we're on the same page here, but I agree. I'm not nearly as high on this one as other ones. I have this down for maybe 1 unit just because we're getting some good line value.
Yeah, I'm in the same boat. Mark's saying a feather in the cap they're not getting. Yeah, I mean, it's going to be pretty tough for the Bears to beat the Packers. Like, a lot of weird things going to happen. Like weird fumbles, kickoff returns, like strange circumstances. Even if those happen, like, the Packers will probably still find a way to win. But it's like all about the motivation. It's like the Bears are going to be trying really hard to win this game, especially after losing how they did last week. Like, they're just like played very poorly. This is their Super Bowl. Like, they have nothing else to play for. I just feel like we agree that they're going to be playing very hard in this game. All right, the Monday night game, Rams at the Cardinals. Now, there was a line change like as we were recording. So this open up Cardinals -3. It's now down to 2.5. It looks like there's been sharp action on the Rams. So now the line is -2.5. So with that in mind, who do you like in this game?
Yeah, I like the Cardinals. I like them at -3. I like them at 2.5, even if the sharps are betting them. I get it. They beat the Rams by 17 the first time that they played. But if you just look at how Arizona has played this year, it's kind of insane. So they have 10 wins, right? And in those 10 wins, they've covered the spread 9 times. Like, they're 9-1 against the spread when they win. So basically, what it boils down to for me, and let me say this too, the one game that they didn't cover that they won was that game against the Vikings, where the Vikings really should have won that game. Mm-hmm. So realistically, the Cardinals are 9-0 against the spread in games that they should have won. But if you think that the Cardinals are going to win a game, then you should bet on them to cover the spread. That's my philosophy about it. I don't expect the Cardinals to lose this one. Again, I know that they crushed the Rams the first time they played, but they have a ton on the line this week. If they beat the Rams here, they basically lock up the NFC West, because they would be 3 games up with a tiebreaker on the Rams with 4 games left. So that would mean that the Rams would have to win out and the Cardinals would have to lose out for that to happen. And the Cardinals play Detroit next week, so they're not losing out if they beat the Rams. No offense to Detroit or Dan Campbell there, but the Cardinals don't have anything to look ahead to, and I know that the Rams are probably going to be motivated to bounce back in this one. But I think they're still gelling. They're getting used to life without Robert Woods and integrating Odell Beckham into the offense. It's looking better. I think it'll come together soon. Integrating Von Miller into the defense, again, it's looking better, but that defense still has to come together. It's still kind of weak at the linebacker spot, so Kyler Murray will be able to attack the middle of the field. And Kyler Murray, I know he didn't have to do a lot against the Bears last week because of all the turnovers, but I thought he looked decent in his time back. DeAndre Hopkins wasn't on the field entirely, but he was still back. So I think that they have enough weapons to pull out this win, so I'm going to go with them to cover here. I've got the Cardinals -2.5 in this one. I like it more now that it's dipped below -3, but it also, going against the sharps is not usually a good thing. So I'm interested to hear what you think if you have a different opinion.
Yeah, we're on the same side. I like Arizona. It's like you have to kind of ask yourself, what is the health of the 3 major guys in this game? Obviously on Arizona, you have Kyler Murray and DeAndre Hopkins. Murray only threw 15 times against Chicago, and Hopkins caught 2 passes or 3 passes. Is like pretty low. But Hopkins didn't have to play the entire game, and he made that acrobatic catch in the end zone. So it kind of like showed me that, he's either 100% or getting close to it. I think they were kind of saving him for this game. With Murray only throwing 15 passes, he didn't need to, because Chicago kept surrendering points to Arizona, like 24 points allowed. But Murray was running around pretty well, and so I thought his ankle looked pretty good. And then you have Stafford, who has the chronic back issues. The Rams scored 37 points against the Jaguars last week, but Stafford had some great throws in that game for sure, but he didn't really need to do all that much. The Rams relied on Sony Michel to run a lot too. And plus back injuries can kind of be pretty finicky. They can resurface at any given moment. I think Stafford could still be less than 100%. So like that factors into my pick here. I also like how the Arizona defense can match up against the Rams Rams offense, I should say. Cooper Kupp had his like lowest, I think one of his lowest outputs of the year against the Cardinals. It's because like Byron Murphy can take him away, and so like that was a game where the Rams still had Robert Woods. So if the Cardinals can take away Cooper Kupp with Murphy again, and there's no Woods, all Stafford has at his disposal is Van Jefferson, who can have some nice catches, and then Odell Beckham, who's just not really quite gelling with Stafford yet. So I feel like this is just a tough spot for the Rams. I think the Cardinals will win this game, so I'm with you on this. I like them better at -2.5, obviously, than -3. But yeah, I'm kind of confused about why the sharps are on the Rams.
Yeah, I am too. And I wonder if it's just a motivational thing, if they think, oh, the Rams know they have to win to keep it in the divisional race. But, I would think that motivation is canceled out by the fact that Arizona knows it can basically win the division with a win. So that was my number one reason for this. And just the Cardinals do not win by cheap amounts. Like they've won every game except the one against the Vikings by 7 points. So, maybe the Rams keep it close, but we're getting the 3 here. So I think that the Cardinals certainly should be able to beat the Rams by 3, given what they showed earlier in the season. So I'm glad we're on the same side here because when I heard the sharp thing, I got a little nervous, but I've got 2 units down and could go for a third here on Arizona, depending on the injury reports and everything.
Okay. Yeah, I wasn't planning on betting in this game. I just like other games more this week. But yeah, I could be talked into Arizona for a unit or two. Won't be one of my top plays though. Just because it's such a tight game. Like I feel like Arizona winning by 3 is probably like the most likely result, and it was -3. So yeah, obviously the -2.5 is more appealing. All right, let's get to Survivor. I'm going to show your picks here. I'm going to read them off, which is going to be painful, but I'm doing so because people might be listening on iTunes. So you've gone with the 49ers, the Broncos, Cardinals, Bills, Patriots, Rams, Buccaneers, Bengals, Colts, Steelers, Browns, Cowboys, Vikings. So I'll let you decide who you're going to take as I read mine off. So I've gone with the 49ers, Browns, Broncos, Bills, Vikings, Rams, Cardinals, Bengals, Cowboys, Steelers, Titans, Ravens, Chiefs, who won last week, and now I'm going with the Packers. I was kind of surprised to still have the Packers available. I thought I'd use them already, and then I feel like they're the top option this week against Chicago. I know we like Chicago to cover, but I'd be shocked if the Packers lost to the Bears. Like I said, something weird would have to happen. Multiple fumbles returned for touchdowns, Aaron Rodgers getting hurt, like something weird like that. Otherwise, the Packers will beat the Bears. Although I'll probably like saying that, I'll probably eat those words. But I'd be so surprised if the Packers lost. So I'm going with Green Bay this week. Who do you like?
Yeah, I actually also have the Packers available, so I'm going to go with the Packers too. I got to snap a little 2-game skid, but like you said, the Packers shouldn't lose to the Bears, but I do think the Bears can cover. It's just, if Green Bay just would have to turn it on for basically the fourth quarter, they could be down by 20 late, and they could easily win at 21-20 in the fourth quarter if they had to. So that's my logic on it. I think they cover, but I think the Packers win.
Okay, sounds good. So we'll see if that survives for us. Like I feel like we've had some obvious picks as well earlier in the year, and they just didn't pan out. That's kind of like how Survivor goes, right? It's just like you can't really. Predicting the NFL is like pretty tough, like not just against the spread, but straight up. So with the teaser this week, you mentioned earlier Atlanta plus 8.5. That's definitely one leg of my teaser. I wanted 49ers plus 7.5. Right now, that's not available, but if we get if the Bengals move to -1.5, we're gonna get 49ers plus 7.5. If so, that'll be the second leg. If not, I'm gonna take Seattle -1.5. So here we move through 7, 6, 4, and 3, which is what you want to do. I like Houston to cover, but I feel like this is a game where Russell Wilson is going to find a way to win against the Texans. Now the Texans have beaten the Titans recently. They can pull the upset, but I think Seattle is still going to find a way to win. Like I said, I'd rather have San Francisco, but Seattle is I feel like a decent second leg.
Yeah, this was actually the exact teaser I would have picked given the numbers that we had, because I like Seattle, and like is a very strong word for my actual feelings about them at -7.5. But, we're talking about -1.5. Yes, they should absolutely beat the Texans. They should win by a field goal at least, I feel like. And I liked Atlanta at +2.5. So getting +8.5 seems like the perfect option.
All right, awesome. So yeah, that's about it for this week. Do you have anything to plug?
Yeah, you can follow me on Twitter at Jacob Camenker. I'll share all of my work and most of my Sunday picks, or at least most of my favorites. I'll share all my primetime picks too, even if it brings me great pain. Like when I shared the Bills pick last night and knew all my New England followers would get mad at me, and then the Patriots won. Thankfully, no one was mean to me because they knew I was rooting for the Patriots. But yeah, anyway, follow me on Twitter for that, and check out sportingnews.com for everything NFL and fantasy related. We got a ton of stuff over there. So yeah, and if you have any questions, just reach out to me on Twitter. I'm always down to help if I can.
Awesome. Sounds good. I'm at walterfootball.com. Tons of content as usual. Our picks are going to be updated throughout the week, Thursday, Saturday, Sunday, and then Monday for the Monday night game. Fantasy rankings, if you're alive for the playoffs, which start in a week, fantasy rankings, start 'em, sit 'em, and then tons of content for the 2022 NFL draft. It's hard to believe draft season starts in about a month. We have Charlie and I have our updated mock drafts. Charlie has great content as usual, prospect rankings, stock reports, big board, plenty of breaking news for the draft that he's breaking. He's updated his 2023 NFL mock draft as well, and I'm going to have mine updated soon too. Yeah, definitely check out all the content at walterfootball.com. Also hit like, subscribe, comment below, share this video, and visit the link in the description for the merch store. So yeah, that is it for this week, and I'll talk to you week 15.
All right, sounds good. Talk to you then.
All right, bye.